Hey, you guys. With this lockdown in South Africa and COVID-19 coronavirus having the influence it's having across the world at the moment, I wanted to talk just quickly to us about some really practical steps that we can take as church leaders, but I think this also applies to leadership across the board, even business leadership. Some steps we can take, active steps that we can take to be able to continue leading and continue thriving and having momentum going forward. I don't think it's helpful just to stick our heads in the sand and just hope this thing out. I think there's some pretty active things that we can do. And so I'd like to talk about those just quickly today. So the first thing is, and it's really practical, is I think it's really important at the moment to be leading from the front. And what I mean by leading from the front is we can't sit, especially at the moment, we can't sit on the back foot and kind of lead responsively to what's going on. As something happens, I think we need to be proactive in dealing with it and putting a way forward for people. In a time with so much uncertainty, I think people are sitting and we don't always realize the role that local church plays in people's lives. Jesus said, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. And there's this way relationship with God, but there's also this way relationship with local church. And so for people, local church is a place where they express their gifting, but also they receive comfort and community. It's kind of this two-way street in and out of their life. And if they aren't sure about what's happening with local church, it's just another aspect of their life that wobbles all over the car park. And I think knowing the Jesus that we know, and also being the church and not having to do the church the whole time, it gives us an ability, if we lead from the front, to be able to have or help people that there is at least one thing in their life that is set and has got some element of stability to it. And I'll talk about what that looks like going forward, but it's important for us to understand that to leave our decisions and just to float along without making clear-cut decisions quickly and decisively at the moment is really hard for people, especially for those of us following. I think for business leaders at the moment, if you're going to need to be paying people a smaller salary, if you're going to need to be making salary cuts, whatever the decisions are that you know you're going to need to be making, just putting off communicating that with people in the hope that it'll just disappear is incredibly unhelpful. Rather have the conversations up front, lead strong from the front so that people know what's coming up. It's the uncertainty which wobbles so much at the moment. And so what are you going to be doing as a church? And I think part of leading from the front is also making sure within this that don't over promise and under deliver, rather under promise and over deliver. This is a great time to be able to just what do you say you're going to do? And if you say you're going to do that, do it. If you say you're going to have a weekly prayer meeting online, do it. If you say we're going to be having our connect groups or our home groups, discipleship groups, whatever you call them, online, and we're going to be doing it, we're going to be training our connect group leaders how to do it, then do it. It's really important. Stick to your guns. Rather under-promise and deliver well on those things that you've under-promised on and then go above and beyond than the other way around. Let's lead from the front. Be courageous in leading from the front. Secondly, is a part of that is to communicate clearly and often. And part of communicating clearly and often is to understand that at the moment, people, because we are feeling a bit isolated and locked down, people aren't as oversensitive to feeling spammed as they usually do feel. And so it's really helpful at the moment to keep communicating. We're talking to our church at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. I video a morning devotional every morning, an 8-minute devotional, and send it to them on a video devotional, which I upload to Facebook and send them the link. I'm over-communicating about what's going on all the time. Because even if people aren't reading that communication, just the rhythm of the communication is giving them some sense of security that someone's talking. I know where to go. If things get tricky, I know who to talk to. I've got this community around me. Sometimes just the fact that we are the background noise is enough for people. And also people shouldn't be looking and having to go and look for information at the moment. That's just another uncertainty that they're fighting for. And so to communicate often and clearly. And also around communication, one of my mentors, Grant Crawford, always taught that when we're communicating with people, there's three types of people we're trying to communicate with. There's the cerebral people. It's all going on inside their head. They're over-processing. They're thinking everything. So we've got to talk to them. We've got to have a bit of an intellectual conversation with them. There's the heart-feely people who are feeling disconnected at the moment and who are, it's all going on inside here, and how are people feeling, and loneliness and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got the really quote-unquote spiritual kind of people. They're the kind of guys who, if they're in your church, they don't care much about the preach. And the tea coffee time, if worship goes on for 3 hours and everyone gets prophesied over there as happy as Larry. And we've got to talk to those kind of people as well. I think also in communicating clearly and often, you've got to understand that whilst fear is a very real thing to be talking to, not everyone's paranoid. Not everyone's afraid. Some people are just confused. I don't know what the future's going to hold. Some guys are feeling empty at the moment because they've been so busy on the treadmill of working so hard that now all of a sudden they're at home and they're looking in their hearts and they're like, I don't like this person that I've become. What happened to me? I've kind of sold my soul in a bit. And so, and also on top of that, there's other people that are doing fairly well, actually, and that are just tired. One of the things I realized fairly early on, I was talking to our church about, we coined this term, which we stole from a guy in the States, called staycation. I was like, hey guys, staycation, what are you doing today? Because we're working hard, but I think, I thought a lot of other people would be on sort of semi-holiday at home. You're baking bread today, you're lying out in the sun, what are you doing? And our church is, because we planted the church fairly recently, it's a church full of entrepreneurs. And guys just got hold of me, they're like, hey John, we're not sitting at home baking bread, we're working our backsides off. And I was like, sure, but okay. So I can't just talk to those that are resting at home at the moment. There's also those that are working super hard at home. They're still making money, they're still working hard, but they're tired. And so I think it's really helpful to make sure that when we communicate clearly and often, we know who we're talking to. Because it's very easy as a church leader almost to be talking into the mirror. I'm talking to myself because that's my frame of reference. And even though I can be talking regularly, but it's not clear because the people I'm talking to, it's kind of going over their head or just off to the side because it's not contextual for them. So communicate clearly and often. Encourage the weak. Spur on the strong. Encourage the guys that are running super hard to rest well and sleep well. Just at many levels to communicate clearly and often. Third thing is, I think we, more than ever, we need to be authentic. This is a time where you can't candy coat it a little bit. One of the funniest things about this, funny in an ironic kind of sense, is that when we look at this season, we have never actually had much of a handle on the future. The Bible promises us that. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. But because of almost the monotony of life, we feel like we know what tomorrow is going to bring, and we draw security from that. Now with COVID-19, we feel like we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Tomorrow is no more unpredictable today than it's ever been. It's just really apparent at the moment. And so I think authentic conversations around where people are, is really important. And it starts, I think, for us as pastors and leaders, we've got to be authentic with ourselves and deal with our own fears and talk these things through with our spouse and other guys that we respect and we're walking with. We've got to be authentic with where we're at around this thing. It's no good projecting an air of whatever we feel like we need to project, whereas back home it's not the same thing. What we have in our hearts has to be projected. And I think around that, we can't, it's so important that we are honest about what's going on in the world. But at the same time, that Jesus is still king. We can't sit there and be Jesus is king and this is all a joke and don't worry about it, we'll just get through them all. Because it's not true. People are dying. It's very, very real. On the other side, we can't throw our hands in the air and just hope everything goes away. Also around being authentic is we can't just hope that everything's just going to go back to normal. We have to come to terms with the fact that the normal is not, we are never going back to the way things were. There is a new normal and we don't know what that new normal is going to look like. And so for us to be authentic and honest about that, to be able to say to people, I don't know what the future holds. Rather than promising them some pie-in-the-sky dream, don't worry guys, when this is all over, it'll all be fine again. Rather, I don't know what tomorrow brings, but Jesus is with us and we've got each other. And what an adventure to go on together, the fact that we are together. Really being authentic and honest about where things are at. The fourth thing is that we need to learn to thrive within the bounds. And what I mean by thrive within the bounds, I remember someone once talking about creativity Creativity is not the ability to do something amazing if you've got endless resources available to you. True creativity is actually the ability to do something incredible with constrained resources. That's what makes creativity so amazing. It's like when someone takes a pencil, and just with a pencil, they draw this incredible panorama. And you're like, how do they do that with a pencil? Because I've held a pencil before, and I use it to scratch my ear. And that's about as good as I get with a pencil. And so true creativity or thriving within the bounds requires that there are bounds. And what do I mean by that, thriving within the bounds? If we as a church are able to understand that primarily we should be, and not just churches, businesses as well, whatever the organization is or group of people is, we are values driven rather than function driven. And what I mean by that is we're not obsessed with how we go about doing what we're doing. We know why we're going about doing what we're doing. And the why drives the what, and the why drives the how. And so if we are able to take a moment, and I think this is incredibly helpful at the moment, to go back to what is the why at the moment. What is the big idea? What is the thing we're trying to achieve? What is the grace of God over the house? So each individual local church, I believe, has a specific grace over that specific house to see God do something, and it's tied up in the leadership of that church and all that kind of stuff. What is the word that God's spoken over that house? Now, maybe you weren't able to do it that way, but you are able to do it this way. It's like, I've heard some guys say, well, we're just going to hunker down and wait for this thing to go away. Look, like I just said, normal is gone, right? So it's not like there is no more soccer field to play on anymore. Now we just got to sit with our ball under our arm and wait. There is no soccer field, but to use the metaphor, there is a swimming pool at the moment. There is still a way to do what we're meant to do and live out our values. It's just different. And so to be able to, if we're sitting around making excuses, saying to people, oh, we can't do this, and we can't do that, and we can't do this, and we're bemoaning the situation and being grumpy with the government, for instance, which is incredibly unhelpful because we just breathe that negativity through the church and make it hard to kickstart whatever the next season looks like. Rather, guys, the playing field has changed. We used to do it this way. Now we're going to do it this way. And if that shift is in line with our values, no one wobbles, because they're like, oh, we used to do it like that, but we're doing it like this, but there's the same reason behind it, because we're a values-driven people. And so I think it's really, really important for us to be able to go back and have a look and not be afraid and to be inspired and go, well, we want to pray together as a people. How do we do that? And then take some time to think a little bit about that. What about translocal input into your church? How do you do that at the moment? Well, it's really easy. The guy can record a sermon on his phone, and then you can play that back on a Sunday. There are ways of doing things where we can have where we can still achieve the same ends, but just on a different playing field. And I think when we take a step back and do have a look at that, we can draw huge courage and actually get quite excited about it. We have opportunity to thrive and to go faster within the bounds. And I know that this may seem like a silly kind of metaphor, but when the bounds are this wide, right, we go at a certain speed. But I honestly believe that the tighter the bounds get, the more momentum we're able to have because we're doing less. We're not doing a whole bunch of the busy rubbish. What these tight seasons do is they glean off a lot of the stuff that we were just doing for the sake of doing it that had no meaning anymore, and they were like purposeless, and we're like, why are we doing that? I don't know. Well, we can't do that, and we just chop it off. And so what happens is the church becomes this lean, mean machine that can operate quickly. Why? Because we like distill things down to what are the prime important things that we are on about who we are as a church. And then we're able to keep doing those things together. Number 5 is this. It's kind of a question. Do I feel restrained at the moment, or do I see this as an opportunity to add a string to my bow? What I mean by that is, for our church in particular, we live in a very busy city here in Johannesburg, and we hadn't really explored the online option of doing much. Been fighting for authenticity and community and meeting together. But one of the things that's been hard is, how do I call people out? Guys come from all over our city, and sometimes they have to travel an hour and a half to come to a meeting. And so I don't have faith to call people out more than once a week to a Sunday meeting. So we don't have a big corporate prayer meeting. We don't have corporate training meetings. So how do I do that? And we've tried different ways, But now what's so awesome about the season is stuff like Zoom and some of these online platforms have gone from being out there as an odd thing that like sort of fresh, edgy churches would do, and they've become mainstream. And so now I can take these things and make them a string in my bow going forward. That we can do an online prayer meeting. Fully do that and pray. We've been doing it on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. The church knows we send out the link with the devotional on Tuesday and Thursday morning. Guys, dial in via Zoom. And it's not a connect group. We don't chat, and it's not a conversational forum. We just pray. And at the moment, it's just half an hour from 7 to 7:30 in the morning. Dial in. We're just going to pray and trust God. And it's not begging God. It's not prayer from a place of desperation. It's prayer from a place of hunger. Lord, we need you. Being able to change that in people's minds. Lord, I want more of you, Lord. In this season, I want more of you. In the good season, I want more of you. Lord, we always need more of you. But it's given us an opportunity to do that. I get to talk to our church every morning and be able to train them. Last week we did 5 days on basic exegesis, on how to understand Scripture. Scripture interprets Scripture. Use simple texts to interpret complicated texts. Let the text speak for itself. What does this text say about you? What does this text say about who God is? Took them through that little bit by little bit. And some of the most amazing testimonies from guys coming back and going, John, you know what? I'm going to take a break from your devotionals. I want to take these principles and go and study the Bible for myself and find out for myself what God is saying. I want to hear his voice for myself. So this is such a wonderful opportunity for those of us who haven't been comfortable with stuff online to be able to put stuff online and to be able to speak. And I think we need to be wise about what we do and don't put online. But for us to be able to use technology to be able to speak to people is an incredible opportunity. This is an opportunity to go wide. And then when things go back to normal, whatever that means, this is something that we take with us as an extra string in our bow to be able to be more effective. Number 6 is really it's an important time for us to activate the saints. Maybe you're not the most techno-savvy guy in the world, and you haven't had a whole bunch of experience about this stuff. I'm sure there's somebody in your church that is. This is an opportunity to activate them. I've got friends who couldn't edit a video to save their lives, but there's some guys in Young Oaks in their church who do. So they shoot a video and they send it off to this guy, and he edits it, and it's an opportunity to activate him. We've got some fitness instructors in our church. One lady's a fitness model, so she does fitness with the church on a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday. We've got a guy who's this super chef guy and fancy coffee guy. So on a Thursday afternoon, 2:00, he does a Facebook live feed where he does like cooking classes and just a whole bunch of different stuff. I've used this as an opportunity with our songwriters and our musicians. And we just kind of on a Google Drive share, just uploading little songwriting ideas. And we really want to write a song during this time. I don't know what's going to happen. But we're just bouncing some ideas around and talking to one another. It's an opportunity to activate the saints, to be able to talk about the need that is out there, to be able to talk about what needs to be done, and then let people put up their hand and say, I'd like to be involved in that. Got an older couple who do deliveries, wonderful couple. They do deliveries already for their business, and so they've offered to drive around and drop off food parcels. They've got permission from the police to be able to do that. And so that's what they're doing at the moment on behalf of the church when people don't have food. This is an opportunity to activate the saints. What is in the hearts of people? Right? I often say this, it's one thing to look at the church and go, well, in the church there's this role, and this role. So what I do is when someone walks in, I go, well, which of these 3 roles can I stuff them into? And I take the person, I try to shove them in. But it's only ever best fit, right? Because no one is a perfect fit for those things. So I try to stuff him in and he maybe loses an arm, but at least he most of the way goes in. That's one way of doing church. But how about the picture of all the streams flowing as one river? So in other words, every person that walks in is a piece of a puzzle. And they come in and somehow when each of them are running in their gifting, this puzzle just forms into this incredible picture. And each one has a specific role. Maybe me as the lead guy in the church, if I'm lucky, maybe I'm an edge piece. I'm not the corner. Jesus is always the corner and he's the box, the picture. But maybe at best I'm an edge piece, but we need each piece functioning. And so it's a great time and a great opportunity to emphasize that. And so to take the moment when you're spending time with people on encouraging them on a WhatsApp video call or Zoom call or whatever, not just how you doing, how you're not going crazy, has your wife slipped anything into your food to try and, because you've been frustrating the daylights out of her, just rather when we're spending time with people, or we're calling them higher, what's your thing? What's your gift? What are you feeling? And starting to call people. It's very easy for us to think that at the moment our role is to somehow bring people from below the line of average life and try to bring them back. We're going to try and help people get healthy. We're going to help people stay positive, help people. But friends, we were never called to call people back to status quo. We were always called to call people higher and above and into the more of God and the bigness of God. And so one of the ways we do that is to activate them and see them run in their gifting. And there is space for that, even if you begin to think about it. The last three things quickly. Number 7, I think the most important thing if we're going to be shepherding at the moment is to shepherd our shepherds, lead our leaders. And the reason I say that is many of our leaders are those that are most devoted and that are most plugged into the church. And so they are feeling the disconnection more than most. They also are worried about people the most and concerned for others. And especially those who are not full-time, and that's the vast majority of people in the church. They really are busy, their lives are going on, and they're feeling disconnected from people, and so they're not having those regular touchdowns. And if they're leaders worth their salt and shepherds after God's heart, they're carrying the weight of people. And so to be able to create forums for them to touch down with people, help them to be able to touch down with people, to be able to say, hey, would you mind getting hold of this person? Would you mind caring for that person? Would you mind... We've got the number of connect groups in our churches almost doubled over this time of COVID-19 because people want to be connected to stuff. And so we've got guys leading more than one connect group at the moment because we've got a little bit more time in the evenings. And just creating space for people to interface and helping our leaders understand. You know, for them, and I think this is just a general thing, oftentimes we can, in a season like this, we can forget that some people come to the church and they're part of local church and they're involved in local church, and in interfacing with local church they can lose sight of Jesus a little bit, and so they get so caught up in doing church that they lose sight of Jesus. And what happens is in a moment like this, when that proximity or that feeling touch of local church is withdrawn a little bit, it throws them completely, and they feel like where's my faith? What am I standing on? What's going on? And it exposes a little bit of what's going on inside of their hearts. And this is a great time to be able to push in and make sure that our shepherds are okay. Please don't look over your shepherds to the people. Make sure your shepherds are okay, because this is an incredibly tricky period for them as well. Number 8, I said share. And what I mean by that is just if you find a way, if you find a resource, if you find a method that's really helpful, please share it with others. Because I'm hoping that eldership teams and leadership teams across the church are sitting going, these are our values. Now we are looking for vehicles to outlive these values, work out these values. Now, I don't want people speaking into my values at the moment, but I don't mind if people are speaking into method at the moment and helping me find ways to communicate that method. It's very dangerous when I'm asking people to define my values for me, especially if my values are entrenched in a method. But once I've sorted out what my values are and what we want to do and what's important for us, then how that's worked out, well, hopefully people are sharing and talking about, what about using a Zoom webinar to do a live Sunday meeting? You know, you can have live worship, a live sermon, a live whole thing. You can have up to 10,000 attendees. You can have a whole bunch of participants, and you can really do a live meeting. Do you want to do that? What about pre-recording? What about Facebook Live? What about Instagram Live? What about YouTube Premiere? There's a whole bunch of different avenues that we have available to us at the moment. And if we can share a little bit, let people know what you're up to. If you've One Life Church in Peter Maritzburg have been amazing at creating a kids resource, which they send out half an hour kids full-on resource like Kids Church, which we just fully using. Stick our brand on it. They've supplied it unbranded, said stick your stuff on it. So we stick our brand on it and send it off to our kids team. And they're able to keep helping their parents and keep loving on their parents, because we don't have the capability to do that at the moment. And if you're producing resources, send them. Talk to people about it. Lastly, it's steal. And that's steal as in rob, thief, take. And I think this is a great time to be able to looking over the fence and seeing what other guys are doing. Now, not because I'm looking to achieve the same outcome as them. It's not if I use your method, I'm going to get the same outcome. But now that I've worked out what my values are and what we're on about, I want to find methods to achieve those. And I don't think that I'm all that. I don't think I'm Superman. I don't I don't have to sit back on my, and go, well, I've got to come up with a solution for everything. There's guys coming up with solutions all over the place at the moment. And I'm happily to steal those solutions, learn from them, ask them questions. Even if you're in a small town. Cindy and I led a church for a while in a little town called Moy River. And even in Moy River, it was amazing how it's very easy to think, well, this is a small little town, But the world is connected at the moment. And so please don't settle for small. Please don't settle for status quo or settle for, it's just a small little town. It doesn't really make a difference. Of course it makes a difference. This is the church of Jesus. Learn, grow, stretch yourself. And I think find out ways. The prayer meeting idea of having a prayer meeting in the mornings like that at 7 o'clock, that's not my idea. That came from a friend of mine who has one every morning like that. Now, we have a devotional every morning, so we're only doing a prayer meeting twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. But they're cooking. I never would have thought of doing that. I thought it would be weird sitting staring at a screen, busy praying together without talking. Turns out it's not. Turns out Jesus really is omnipresent, and it's really powerful. And so we're loving that. Now, I've been happy to learn and steal the fitness idea of getting the fitness model lady in our church to be able to get up and doing that. It didn't come from me. There's tons of guys doing that fitness stuff. Now, I can send guys off to go look at those guys, which is fine. Or what I could do is maybe challenge her and activate her, but then also get the church on board with it. So it's good for both, not just good for one. And so I think in all of this stuff, to be looking over the fence, asking questions. What are you doing? What's this person doing? Scratching. Hey, that looks really, really cool. How did you come up with that idea? Because there are guys that are winning. And friends, we can't afford to be sitting at the moment hoarding our solutions, which I guess is more share. But at the same time, we can't be sitting too proud to ask. This is a great time to be on the phone. Hey, man, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing about this? Hey, I really feel like we need to do this. How are we going to achieve it? Talking to our leadership team, because it's really important to be consultative at the moment in our leadership. This is the one time we can't afford to be autocratic and making all the decisions ourselves. And not that we should ever be like that. But as we're making these decisions, we really need to achieve this value. How? I don't know. Well, I'm going to phone a few guys and find out how they're working out that value. Flip, what a good idea. Maybe your idea is a hybrid of their ideas. But this is a great time to steal and get other guys speaking into your world. So hopefully that's been helpful. If there's anything that you'd like to talk through, you're welcome to, if you've got my number, you're welcome to give me a call and talk to me there. Or you can send me a direct message on Facebook and we can talk. And not that we've got the answer at all. I really do feel like there's a little bit of a shift. I think if we put some of this stuff into place, we can surge forward in this season and pick up momentum as the church, because we've got a real opportunity to be the church right now. And so if you guys have got some cool ideas, please do send them through to me as well. I'll learn from anyone at the moment. I'm loving this journey of learning and growing. I know that it's an incredibly difficult time for many of us, but this is a great time for us not to put down our swords, not for us to just provide sort of an online meeting on a Sunday and go on holiday and hope that the world's going to go back to normal. Friends, the way things are, we're never going back there. And this is the new normal hasn't been defined at the moment. But the one thing that is true is Jesus hasn't been caught by surprise. Jesus has never, ever changed. And so we lean into him. And in leaning into him, we can have fun and we can grow and we can develop in our method and while staying true to what God's called us to do.